listens to his voicemail and gets his own messages and returns a phone call. Some people do have people still that answer the phone at an office, but if they did that, they would probably not take a message like this. They would probably transfer into voicemail, put you into his voicemail, and you can leave him a message. So, by and large, these would not be used in an office, most likely. So then, going along with the phone is the Rolodex. So these are just Rolodex cards. There's two here. You fill in the name, phone number, fax, email, address, and a cell phone number of a person. You have notes on the back. I'm surprised that this does not have a company name, that you would not have name and then company name. I'm not sure why. But there is a file for it. Sometimes it would be long with little hooks on the bottom that you would snap these into, and then you could flip through, and it would be in alphabetical order. There would be dividers, A through Z, and the original Rolodex, which I guess is how they got the name, was on. It would be rolled. It was in a circle type shape, and these would all fan out, and you would just spin the edges and get to A and flip through and find the person that you were looking for. I tried to purchase a Rolodex to show you online, and I did find somebody who had one, and I ordered it, and the order was never filled. So I'm assuming that they don't have it, because otherwise I think they would have jumped at the opportunity to sell a Rolodex right now. So I'm assuming they don't have them or lost them 10 years ago in a box in their warehouse, because I don't think people use Rolodexes anymore. Maybe some people, but probably not a whole lot. But that is the card that would go into a Rolodex. I think they did make kind of a variety of it, where it would be like a plastic cover, so you could slide somebody's business card in instead of filling out a card. But still, probably not. I think that, again, email, you can keep contacts in your computer, in your email. Start typing somebody's email address and it just pops in, and that is a big way of contacting somebody. In a telephone, maybe you would have that saved in your phone contacts. So technology has provided a better way of keeping track of contact information for people. So then we have another thing here, and this is carbon paper. So we sort of have two versions of carbon paper that I'm going to show you, but this is the old original legitimate carbon paper. So one side is just paper, one side has carbon. It has a coating on it. And how this works is you would take Usually people would just use multiple